Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about this D&D, this 2023 Dungeons & Dragons OGL 1.1 leak, Firestorm, this eruption of emotion and fury and insults from OSR 1.0 champions, OGL 1.0 champions, OSR champions and indie champions, right? They're like, hey, the corporate greed, Hasbro's doing us dirty, man. We fight for the right to make derivative content and insult Dungeons & Dragons at the same time. That's really what the banner's all about, in my humble opinion, right? But what I want to talk about today is this false assumption. And all these people are saying, look how unfair Hasbro is. Like Nerd Immersion is saying it. And Professor Dungeon Master said it, and AJ Pickett said it, and Game On said it, and 100 Indestructo Boy said it, and 100 other channels, right? They're like, oh, how dare Hasbro, not hold on to these OGL 1.0, whiners, and make sure that they can make money on Dungeons & Dragons and insult Dungeons & Dragons at the same time. Right? Like, I was just like, because that's really what they're fighting for. Like, all these OGL 1.0 creators, they all make content under the 1.0 and all throw shade at D&D constant, and D&D's creators and WotC and Hasbro all the time. It's absolute drumbeat constant, right? But so when they come out and they're like, hey, the OGL has really helped Dungeons & Dragons. And what I'm going to tell you today is I know I have some harsh language. I don't want to say it's a lie, okay? Here's what I'll say. It's a false assumption, right? Does the OGL help Dungeons & Dragons in 2022? I'm going to put it simple. I'm going to put it fast. The OGL has not helped. The OGL creators, OGL 1.0 creators. There are no OGL 1.1 creators yet, okay? I will say this. We are starting to learn that Matthew Mercer probably got his own deal, and that OGL 1.0 don't really apply to him at all, right? Like, he's got an OGL 1.x, right? He's got an MGL, the Mercer gaming license 1.x that only applies to Critical Role, right? Yeah, we've been learning that, right? There's a lot of speculation that that's the case, and I think that probably is the case in my humble opinion. But here's the deal, okay? No question, all right? So let's just talk about the additions, all right? D&D 1.1, D&D 1E, D&D 2E, they had no OGL, okay? D&D 3E. Between 1999 and 2006, the OGL was magnificently, incredibly helpful. Just spectacularly helpful to Dungeons & Dragons, okay? That is the reality. And, that is the reality, and it was incredibly, incredibly helpful. Truly, truly helpful and appropriate, right? And the OGL creators during that period really helped us a lot. But at the beginning of 2006, there was a new term that came out. It was called Splatbook. Do you remember that, right? And it was like, hey, here's another crusty, black and white, garage band energy, poorly written, poorly laid out, poorly arted Splatbook. It's got D&D's label on it. It's made by some OGL 1.0 creator, right? And there was literally 1,000 different companies, right? And they were all they just started making junk, right? Because people were buying everything with a D&D label on it, right? And D&D was like, oh, this is ugly, right? And then in 2008, and so for OGL, for D&D 3E, right, without a doubt, OGL was invaluable and truly helpful until the end of the last 2 years of D&D 3E. D&D 4E, and nobody cared what the OGL was happening. D&D 4E was an absolute dumpster fire that Robert Heinsohn designed and that D&D barely survived, okay? And so the OGL didn't matter, right? There was literally a question of whether D&D would exist, after the firestorm of D&D 4.4E came out, right? D&D 5th edition, right? Mike Mearls fixes every problem of D&D 4E, right? And then really restores D&D to its former glory. And at that point, I think Hasbro was like, hey, man, every OGL creator out there is, making money on our work, on our foundation, and insulting us at the same time. I'm telling you, this would not be happening if every OGL 1.0 creator out there had said, you know what, here's my book, and this rests on the foundation that was created by Hasbro. Thank you, Hasbro. Thank you, Watsby. That was not happening. Ghostfire Games is the best example. Go look at their podcast, right? They spit fire at their foundational material all the time. Absolute disrespect, absolute disdain, absolute disregard for what their entire business is worked on, right? And sometimes not even subtle, right? James Hake specifically has talked so much smack about WotC and Hasbro and how they suck, right? In 50 different statements, right? You can just find it right over there on Ghostfire Games. And the reason I point at them is they're a template. There's 100 companies just like them. Building OGL content with no gratitude, no respect, right? No reverence for what you're building from, right? And that's the problem here, right? It ain't even about the money. It's not about the piddly little dollars that OGL 1.0 creators. It's about respect, right? And I think Hasbro's like, we're not going to continue to feed these dogs that keep biting our hand, right? This is not right, right? And so when they hit 5.0, they're like, we do not need the OGL anymore, right? And I think, and in my humble opinion, they made a very distinct decision to throttle it, and I think that's exactly what they're doing right now. They're throttling the OGL 1.0 creators, right? And they're saying, enough, shut your mouths. This is about you putting a little respect in your mouth for us, right? And since you didn't, bye-bye. And that's what's happening. And you got all these D&D commentators out there saying, oh, they cannot, you're safe. Your 1.0 content is safe. They can't revoke it, right? You got lawyers trotting out. And they're all like, well, technically, yeah, they can't, but functionally, they absolutely can. Do you guys know what a chilling effect is? Right? Like, we look, and people don't pay attention to the IRL, right? Like, people are like, oh, you can't roll back Roe v. Wade. People are like, oh, we can. Watch this. Or and you're like, technically, that shouldn't have been possible, but oh, look at that. Or like, where's Roe v. Wade now? It's the same thing with the OGL 1.0, right? And so technically they can't revoke anything. Functionally, good luck making content on their way. Every project that on OGL is good. They're like, we're gonna finish what we're doing and we're gonna go create our own rule set. Yeah, great, go do it, right? And then you can compete for real rather than biting the hand that feeds you. So that's what you're really seeing. The OGL 1.0 very legitimately helped Dungeons & Dragons between 1999 and 2006. Tremendously, right? That was real. Then Splat Books, then 4E, and 5E never needed OGL from day one. And the reality is we are here because OGL hasn't helped Dungeons & Dragons since 2006. That's my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear your humble opinion. Please go into the comments, send your traffic, and have a wonderful millennium. Please, also, please like and subscribe.